welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I'm Luke.
And I'm Melissa.
And we are going to do Chapter 9, The Midnight Duel. This chapter is 20 pages, which is 6.47% of this book. Melissa, take it away.
This chapter starts off with the Gryffindor first years having their first set of flying lessons, unfortunately, with the Slytherins. During the flying lessons, Harry realizes that he can control his broom easily, unlike many of the others. Nevel, of course Nevel, ends up taking off too early and falls off his broom, breaking his wrist. We are introduced to Madame Hooch, the flying teacher, who then rushes Nevel off to the hospital wing with the threat of expulsion for anyone caught flying while she's gone. While being unsupervised, Malfoy finds Neville's Rememberall, which was a gift from his gran, and Harry quietly demands it back. Unfortunately, Malfoy doesn't listen to him and flies off with the Rememberall, and Harry follows and does well. Malfoy throws the Rememberall, and Harry catches it in a dive, which is great, until McGonigle sees it. And she marches Harry off into the school, Harry thinking he's about to be expelled, but instead they find Wood, who is not, as Harry thinks, something that he's going to be beaten with, but the name of the Gryffindor Quidditch captain. Harry is drafted as the seeker for the Quidditch house team of Gryffindor, and he is the youngest player at Hogwarts in a century. Malfoy, angry that Harry is not expelled, challenges Harry to a duel at midnight. And so, Harry, with Ron alongside, sneak off to the duel, but not before Hermione and Nevel end up tagging along. Filch, who was probably tipped off by Malfoy, is lurking near the trophy room meeting place, and so the four kids run for it. They run into Peeves, who starts screaming about first years being out of bed, and so they run again, and this time hiding behind a locked door that Hermione magicked opened. They hear Peeves refuse to tell Filch where they are, not, of course, to help them out, but just to mess with Filch. The kids then realize that they are in the forbidden third-floor corridor with a giant, three-headed dog. So they run again. Not being caught, they end up back at Gryffindor Tower, where Hermione informs them that the giant dog was standing on a trapdoor and must be guarding something. Harry begins to think that the something that the giant dog was guarding might be that grubby package that he saw at Gringotts.
That's a fun chapter. It's a lot of excitement.
A lot of running.
A lot of running.
Always keep them running.
So let's talk about the characters that were introduced in this chapter. First, we have a character that we've heard of before, but is finally given a first name. That's Parvati Patil.
It's one of the Patils. There were two.
Correct. So we only know the one that apparently went into Gryffindor.
Right.
Madame Hooch, we meet. She was mentioned before.
She was.
Oh, yeah, because Madame Hooch about...
Yeah, okay. So Madame Hooch was mentioned before. She was mentioned during the Sorting Hat chapter when they talked about the announcements, and if you want to play for your team, you need to see Madame Hooch.
Correct. Pansy Parkinson gets a first name. She was drafted. She was sorted into Slytherin at the Sorting Hat chapter. We also meet Oliver Wood, who is the Gryffindor Quidditch captain, and is pretty fun. And there's also a monstrous three-headed dog.
A couple of locations, again, we're staying within the bounds of Hogwarts, but a couple of new locations we find are the lawn across from the Forbidden Forest where they have their flying lessons, the trophy room with the ill-fated midnight duel, the third-floor corridor with a trapdoor, and a gallery of suits of armor.
The magicabulary that we come across in this chapter are the book Quidditch Through the Ages, the Rememberall, Curse of the Bogies, a position called a Seeker in Quidditch, The broom, called a Clean Sweep 7. The Nimbus 2000s mentioned again. We heard about that in Diagon Alley. And also the spell Alohomora, which was used by Hermione to unlock the door.
I thought it was Alohomora. Maybe not.
What did I say?
Alohomora. I don't know. It was weird.
I don't know. It's not Wingardium.
I always thought it was like Aloha, so Alohomora.
Like hello door.
Kind of.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
But you would think it'd be actually like H-A. Alohomora. I don't know. It's weird, like never actually saying them out loud.
Right. Well, I tend to have that problem and can remember instances of reading as a child where I would have a name in my head, and it was very clearly a book series that I read when I was like in 6th and 7th grade. I read every single book of like 70 or 80 books of this series.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until like there was like a TV show or a movie or a friend reading it and they said a character's name and I had no idea that was how that particular name was pronounced. That happens to me a lot.
I'm more of a visual person on that. So I do the same thing. Like even with Hermione, like that's a good one. Or Ginny even is, because one, I don't like the J sound on as being used as a G. It's a different story.
It's a different podcast that we'll have to start sometime.
But I mean, those two particularly, I remember reading this, that later on I found out I had been saying them wrong, or just not even, like, I just see a name and just go by, it's like, oh, I know who they're talking about, and go through it.
Well, that's a strategy that our sister Abby, who always, like, struggled to read when she was younger, one of her adaptations to help her read is that when she was reading a story, if she came across specifically a name that she was hard to pronounce, if it started with an M, she'd be like, oh, M. That's character M. I'm just going to call that person M. And it didn't really matter if...
As long as you see the full thing and
you identify those letters as the character who you're calling in your brain M, it was fine.
You don't... The letters themselves don't matter. It's what that represents. And as long as you get the imagery of what this group of letters is and you can fly right past it and know who it's talking about, that's really all that counts.
Another thing that's interesting is that a lot of authors, or at least sort of like the 101 of writing a book, is you don't name characters with the same like first letter. You don't do a lot of them. And in here you'll notice, other than really Hermione and Harry, but their names are very different looking.
They are quite.
You don't have many characters who all have the same letter.
Right.
One of the authors who's worst at that,
George R.R. Martin.
Yes.
Talk about 10,000 characters and half of them sound very similar.
Or J.R.R. Tolkien, especially with like all of the Rohan characters. They all start with E-O, pronounced A.
Yeah. Those are
random.
Those are tough. I mean, I see why they do it, because you can get a lot of backstory.
Yes.
If you do know...
And culture.
If you do know the culture that character comes from, you get a lot of information just by seeing their name.
Right.
And it is beneficial once you're deep into it.
Particularly
but
Tolkien.
Starting off, it's brutal.
Oh, it's awful. So you can't call everybody L because they're all L or something.
Right. Or just go to audiobooks and rely on the narrator.
And hope they pronounce it correctly. Off to our in-depth analysis. My first one is the phrase, brooms are like horses. And I've never thought about this before, but can brooms smell fear?
It seems like they can sense it, because we know Nevel is very timid and has no luck. Well, he has no luck getting the broom off the ground initially.
Right, when he's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Performance
Hermione is also incredibly nervous. We know that she's as nervous as Nevel going into it.
Right.
They say that. And she has no luck getting the broom off the ground at first.
Well, and really, most of the kids don't do very well at first.
Right. And I think they are. I think you're right. It is, they're anxious about doing either one because they're really excited to do it.
Right.
Or two, they've never done it before and they don't know what's going to happen. So it seems like there is it can tell if you're anxious, and it's almost like a safety mechanism. I don't want you flying 300 feet in the air if you're going to freak out once we're up there.
Right. It's like you're not getting on me like that.
Right. The broom, it's like a teamwork thing, and he wants to keep the rider safe.
All right.
I don't know. That's a good question, though.
All right. So then my next thought was Hermione. That girl is so bossy. You can't go flying after Malfoy. You can't go to the duel. You can't lose points for Gryffindor. She can't mind her own business. And she says, I told you so a lot.
Yeah, it's really not a good characteristic. She doesn't seem to understand that other people have a little bit different priorities than she does, and they can make their own decisions or make their own mistakes and learn from it. That's one of the best ways to learn sometimes, is make mistakes.
It is the best way to learn.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anything new.
Right.
But yeah, she cannot help but in. How annoying is that?
Well, and then has no social skills with it either. Like,
right.
Doesn't know when to turn it off, doesn't know when it's unwanted, doesn't know, or knows and can't stop. I don't know. She just, in this particular chapter, just rubbed me the wrong way, and it's, that poor girl.
That's pretty rough. And yeah. I can't blame Harry and Ron for being pretty fed up with her already.
No. All right. So then my next question is, when they're talking about the duel and they come up with their second, which I really like the idea of the second, somebody to step in case you die, because I'm dead, but the duel must go on.
Right.
And obviously Ron will be second to Harry. One, because Harry has no idea what that is, so Ron steps up and does it. And two, because they're inseparable. Right. Just short of hand-holding. However, Malfoy chooses Crabbe, but really has to ponder over that. Like,
he really sizes him up,
Crabbe, sizes up Goyle, and chooses Crabbe. Why Crabbe? What makes Crabbe a better second in a duel than Goyle?
I don't know. Do we really have any defining characteristics that separate the two specifically?
None.
I don't think so, right?
They have yet to speak.
Right, and I don't think we've been given any descriptions aside from they're both very large.
Yes.
That's, I'm pretty sure, it at
this
point.
At this point, the only thing that I think Crabbe has going for him is that his last name has 6 letters instead of 5 and comes first in the alphabet.
And he gets mentioned first every time.
It's because he comes first in the alphabet. I swear that's got to be the only reason.
Yeah. I don't know. That's I don't know what Malfoy knows about him because they don't talk. So maybe they talk, back in the Slytherin common room that he knows a little bit more about him, but so far we don't.
We know nothing. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Like, he spends all this time pondering and picks Crabbe, and we have no idea why.
Right. Kind of along with that, one of my notes that I have is a lot of the times that we see the cronies, is what I'm going to call Crabbe and Goyle, we also see the twins either just before or just after.
Really?
They are juxtaposed very, very often. And they both have similar, you don't really get distinction between the two very often.
No, you don't.
So it's always a Crabbe and Goyle thing or the twins thing. This is one of the very, very few times that we've seen so far. And I think moving forward that Crabbe gets singled out.
True.
And it just doesn't happen very often.
No. This is the first time it's happened at all.
So far, the twins have been pretty similar.
Similar. I mean, occasionally you'll see...
Getting onto the train, it was
George who is more willing to help and has Fred come. Fred's the one who starts the joke about, you can't tell us apart.
Right. But there's still usually a 1-2 punch with each other.
Yeah, but because George is then the one who says, we'll send you the toilet seat.
Right. Right. So there's an interesting juxtaposition between those two pairs that I think we should keep an eye on moving forward.
Will do. My other big thought, and this kind of goes along with the fact that you see almost like pair foils between twins and, the Crabbe and Goyle group, is the idea of the duel really shows some character traits and the characters of the, character meaning like the inside morals of a person. When they have a duel, Harry and Ron don't even question following through on the agreement. Of course they're going to go at midnight. Of course they're going to find a way. Of course they're going to fight against the people who are trying to stop them for their own good or whatever reason. There is no questioning that they are going to do this because that would be in questioning their integrity. They said they were going to do it, they're going to do it. On the other hand, Malfoy seems to never have intended to go at all. Uses it as a setup to probably try and get them in trouble. So does that show then that Gryffindor trait of being brave, or you could call it reckless, And the Slytherin trait of being cunning. Or you could call that sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen so far, it seems like it's a pretty good, it's a direct example of those characteristics being put into the plot. And I think you're right that the Slytherins are, being cunning or clever in their own sneaky little way in order to get what they want, which is Malfoy wanting Harry to get in trouble and making him look like a fool by being caught out of bed because Malfoy set him up.
Right.
Malfoy would love that. That would just make his week. Not to mention if Harry did get expelled, that would make Malfoy's school career. He would kind of take over that in his head. Him being the number one student.
I was going to say, is he really going to take that over, or is that more of just wants to?
That's what his ambitious self is striving for.
So I didn't get Harry as the friend, so I'm going to get him out.
Yes.
Got it.
You have to be competitive to be a Slytherin, I think. And
you always need a plot.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he walks around with, just plots in his head of how I'm going to get things done?
I think he's definitely looking for... He's an opportunist, I think, as well. I don't think he's so much a plotter as so much as, hey, this is something that just happened. How can I use that
towards my
goal?
Got it.
Of getting Harry out of the way. So, that's what I think. So, my first note here is Harry runs down the hallway first. Is that because he is a natural leader of that group of four with the Harry, Ron, Neville, and Hermione? Or is this just, again, Harry has incredible athletic prowess and is just the fastest?
The answer to your question of two choices is yes. Because
I agree.
He is the leader. He is not the outspoken one. He's not the brains of the operation. He's not the data collector or the timekeeper or the one keeping. He's the facilitator.
Sure, yeah.
He's the person keeping them all sort of focused together. He's the one who thinks quickly. He's also the one who's probably been in that situation in their life before.
He's been chased
by Dudley. So one, he probably can run faster because he's had to run.
Yeah.
And two, he understands getting away from a situation probably better than any of the rest of them. Yeah. So he's going to run and drag them along with him. He's not going to leave them, but he's definitely going to lead them out of there quickly.
I agree.
Many times.
I agree. Along with that, I think we see a little bit more of where Harry's athletic nature comes from in that we learn Harry's dad was an excellent Quidditch player. I think that's pretty interesting.
I do too. I think it's really nice that JK's dropping in some things for this kid who has never known anything about his family. He has no connection
outside of the Dursleys, which is terrible.
And he's not allowed to ask questions. So even if they had known this, which I'm sure they don't because Dursleys, but...
Because Dursleys.
Because Dursleys. My favorite characters to hate. They wouldn't have shared it anyway, because then they would have known about this, and he would have been known about magic, and he would have known about Quidditch, he would have known about Hogwarts, and even if he had known about all those things, we don't want you to know about those things, and we don't want you to like your dad, because we didn't like your dad.
Right, and we'll squash it out as much as they possibly can.
But it's very cool that he was a good Quidditch player.
That is cool. With the flying lesson, I get the dig on Malfoy, but by JK, but Madam Hooch shows him that he's been gripping the broom wrong for years. Is there really a proper way to grip a broom? I mean,
is there really a proper way to grip a baseball bat?
There's ways that are better, but there's no proper way. You see different batting stances and things all the time, and it's what works best for you, is my point. People run differently, and people are so faster than other people. I mean, if you want to get to the ultimate high-level sprinter, whatever, you're going to run with good form. But in their first lesson, I don't think I think it's just make sure you don't fall off. Obviously, he hasn't fallen off much before.
Well,
if he's flown as much as he says he has, which maybe he hasn't. I don't know.
Okay, I guess my thinking would be, I agree that his grip obviously worked for him. But I think at this point, if she sees a kid who knows what he's doing, but is doing one thing obviously incorrectly, like whatever he's doing, it's not going to be his most beneficial, she's going to fix it. I think about, watching my kids at swim. I have one kid who loves to swim and does swim team year round. I have another kid who, was afraid of the water in May and just started like a summer league only because it was, we were already sitting there. So go get in the water. And my kid who can swim a lot, she still gets critiqued on her form. If she's, doing her butterfly whole body kick wrong, somebody's going to stop and tell her, which I expect because that's what she's there for. But my other kid who literally couldn't get her arms out of the water to do freestyle, on her first lesson, the coach is saying, get your arms out of the water for freestyle. Now, is she still getting, crawling her arms in the water and moving? Sure. But the point is, you're supposed to get your arms out of the water for freestyle. So yeah, on day one, she's been told, get your arms out of the water. So I think it's that kind of idea.
So because Malfoy shows that he has some confidence on the broom already, she's teaching to his level for him specifically.
Right. So now for Nevel, it might be, you got on a broom. I'm so proud of you.
It didn't whack you in the head when you picked it up.
You got it up. Yours rolled over. Good job. You teach to the kid, but a kid who can get on there, let me fix the next thing I see. And I'm going to do that for every kid. Yeah. I think that's an excellent teaching strategy.
I did too. I just thought it was interesting to bring it up.
No, I agree. Well, and, anytime you can have a dig on Malfoy is, thumbs up in my book.
So we do see that the total number of Gryffindors and Slytherins first-year students is 20. There were 20 brooms out, and it was just the Slytherin, Gryffindors first years. And
I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay.
I think they were just 20 brooms out.
You think they just have 20, and so there's less than 20?
Right. There could be less than
Possibly.
20. So they probably...
A max of 20.
Right. There's a reason they don't have 3 classes there, because they don't have enough broomsticks to supply 3 classes at a time. They have enough to supply 2.
So Hogwarts budget dictates.
Kind of. I seriously, kind of. There's a reason that it's those 2 together as opposed to all of them at the same time. Or just one of them at a time, because I have enough to accommodate 2 groups. Doesn't mean I have exactly 20. It means I have enough to accommodate that. But if I added a new group in, I'd be short.
At least we have a maximum that it could be.
It's possible.
I'm trying to start looking at the overall size that Hogwarts could be.
I'm devil's advocating you.
Oh no, I know. And this is just the first indication that we really have outside of the sorting, which was very wishy-washy on Harry's attention that was being paid at the time. So this is a more direct number that we can point to. So
if you assume there's about 10 per
house.
Per house per year.
Yep.
So that's 40 per year, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Times 7 years, that's 280 students.
Total.
Which JK has been, quoted at saying
there's 1,000.
Sometimes. Sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's closer to 500, sometimes it's closer to 700. So it's odd to me that there's less than 20, 20 or less kids in 2 classes. So I wonder if this is just a small class.
Small enrollment this year. And I think that was what I was going to get to. As I think enrollment probably does vary because of the number of magical students born, or magical, kids born each year is going to vary depending on the time. And think about when these kids were born.
I was going there. Yes.
I know. And so this was these kids were all born.
Well, really, those 11, kids and the kids for the 10 years previous.
Right. Were all born in Voldemort's major years of reigning and dark power. Just
when people were dying and there wasn't as many magical people
Reign
because
of terror.
This family was dead and this family was dead. So, lots of dead people and not very many people having kids.
Yeah.
There's probably not very many families like the Weasleys having, 7 kids.
Right. So in the years upcoming, I bet there's going to be a lot of kids. After wars, it seems like there tends to be a major influx of kids being born.
The baby boomers in the 50s and 60s after World War II.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think these are just a little bit lower on the enrollment count for these past few years. So and it's so say there are 50 kids in a class, which doesn't seem outrageous if there are more kids being born. So 1,000 is pretty reachable, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think she lowballed it in this. I feel like there could have been more kids. So part of me wonders if she just had like a bank of names and these were just the names and then we ended up only having, 40, 50 kids. Yeah. Or if it was like that much thought put into the background of the, 10 years reign of terror and it
works out if that is the case.
Right. And if she didn't plan for that,
happy accident.
We can totally make a justification for it.
I'll give her this one.
All right, good.
The Remember All seems like a pretty silly invention.
Yeah. Talk about like it
only tells you if you're forgetting something.
But not what the thing is.
That's not going to be helpful at all. It's like, oh crap.
How is that any different? Something. How is that any different than the practice 100 years ago of tying a string around your finger so you didn't forget something? It's the equivalent to today of writing something on your hand and then washing your hand and seeing the pen mark but not being able to read what you wrote.
Right.
Not that I know anything about that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Man, technology's a lot nicer nowadays, isn't it? You can have your Evernote, you can have your Google Drive, just taking notes, and set a reminder on your phone. It's so much more convenient.
It is more convenient. Still write it on my hand. Because I don't have my phone out at school a lot, or I'm in a hallway talking to it. No, like, let me write a note on and so I finally learned I'm going to write down my arm instead of on my hand, but that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. You could be like Hermione, carry that imaginary notebook that we were talking about around.
Yes, except that would require having a notebook and not losing it.
Yeah.
I do that.
And then you have to write on your arm where you lost
yes, notebook is.
Where you lost your notebook.
Anyway, back to the Remember All. It really is kind of a pointless invention. I mean,
I get like the idea. It is very similar to what you were saying with like tying a string around your finger, making a mark on on the back of your hand and saying, hey, you forgot something.
What it really
remember
needs
this
is like a magical string of words that says,
almost like if you turn over a magic 8-ball.
Yes.
Just a quick 3-word note saying...
Write grandma.
Right.
Write to grandma. Clean
School
your underwear.
Books. You
do your homework.
Right. Like, hey, like I said, if I don't put my keys in one of the 2 same places every day, they do not exist. They go to Never Never Land, and they will never be found by me again. Without cleaning the entire house. So if you want me to clean my house, just hide my keys. And by that, just take them off the refrigerator door.
And put them on the counter next to the refrigerator. They'll never
That's actually
find
the
them.
other place that they would be.
I'm sorry. The refrigerator next to... How about on top of the giant microwave?
Put them on my dresser. Harry seems pretty confident that the grubby package that he saw Hagrid get from Gringotts is the only thing worth protecting at Hogwarts. And I mean, he immediately jumps to that being what the 3-headed dog is guarding. Is that naive? Is that just me thinking that's naive of Harry to think that's the only thing worth protecting there?
I don't disagree that he shouldn't have jumped to that conclusion. Because that was very quick. But we're talking about an 11-year-old who has very limited knowledge of anything. Like, he was shocked when the pictures moved.
But he knows how many corridors there are. I mean, he sees how big and crazy this castle is.
Right. I'm just saying, this is a kid who knows nothing about magic at all, who is using his background knowledge of, there is something secret that I saw get out of a vault that nobody else knows about. I mean, I'm not
He's using his context clues, for sure.
Right, and his, schema, his background knowledge there, and he's using what he knows, and I'm not saying that other people wouldn't jump to the same conclusion. I'm just saying kids who might have been there for 5 or 6 or 7 years might have more background knowledge to add to that, to think of other things. He has no other knowledge of anything that could be even slightly sneaky.
Can you think of anything else that might be hidden down there? So I have a theory as to what else the 3-headed dog could be guarding. And that is, it could be guarding the Portrait Town Hall that we mentioned a couple podcasts ago. And, this is just where all the portraits can go. And they can have their town hall meetings, and they can have their big, brouhaha.
Or, they're all adult portraits. Yeah. Maybe they need a place to go be adults without kids being able to see them.
Right. Everyone needs a little privacy, even portraits. So I think they hired this three-headed dog.
Or maybe it's the teacher's lounge.
It's the teacher's lounge. There you go. See?
Only teachers can get in.
Yeah. So that's another possibility, Harry. Think outside the box. Think outside the corridor. All right, let's get into your 5 burning questions.
Right. So, my 5 burning questions starts with this. My favorite little loser, and I say that with love, Nevel. And I have a very serious question about him. So far, Nevel has lost a toad, had walking sticks dropped on him, been picked on by Snape, broken his wrist, and gotten locked out of his tower. The question is, at what point will this kid have a nervous breakdown? I'm really worried.
And he's the next contestant on When Will He Break?
Yes!
It's like an ongoing
and I know we
sound
a little like silly and facetious about it, joking about it, but like this
poor
kid,
some pretty heavy stuff already. It's been 2 months.
It's a
not
really
even
hard transition for this kid, and I know we're getting the story from Harry's point of view.
Which we've seen already is limited at times.
It is limited. It's very just one character's how he sees it. But I sure hope there is some teacher or some adult taking care of this kid, because this is an 11-year-old kid. He's lost, and something. I see him breaking.
Yeah,
I'm a little worried.
He's not in a healthy spot psychologically. He seems to be wearing it pretty well. He seems, from what we've heard so far, pretty happy-go-lucky, but that's only going to go happy-go-luck so far.
Right.
Happy-go-unlucky.
So my next question is, I'm going to see if this makes sense. Is it against McGonigle's nature to not expel Harry for forbidden broomstick flying? So what I mean by that is, she didn't expel Harry. That seems to go against everything we know about her, because everything she threatens seems like she would want to.
Yeah, from what we've heard of her so far is she is pretty strict and stern. I know that sounds like very similar words, but they are slightly different. And she is no nonsense in the classroom. She has very little time for nonsense with Dumbledore in Chapter 1, with the offering of the lemon drop. And
right.
So it seems like this is against her own nature, this type of favoritism. I mean, yes, he shows a clear bit of skill, and yes, it probably makes sense that he could play for the team, but there's already a rule saying
you can't.
First years aren't allowed a broom, and they can't join the team.
Right.
So how does she justify this in her own head? They did say this is the first time this has happened in a century, so maybe they just can't have their own broom. I don't know if they say that they can't play Quidditch.
True.
They just can't bring their own broom, which I think comes down to like a jealousy thing from other students not having it, especially
probably
that grew up in Muggle families.
Right.
So there's no chance they could have them.
Well, or I think about like at the school where I work, it's a kindergarten through 5th grade. Only 4th and 5th graders are supposed to ride their bikes to school. It's a privilege thing. So it's something like that. I have 2 thoughts on this after what you said. The first one is she was at Privet Drive. Like, she has a connection. And so maybe there's, like you said, a little bit of favoritism, just a little bit, just in that sympathy for this kid who has been through a lot, and he was really good, and I kind of want my house to win, so this might be good for us, and hey, he could use an extra, kind of like with Nevel, how I'm hoping that there's a teacher who's looking out for him. It kind of sounds like McGonigle might be looking out for Harry just a little bit.
Right. Same thing that Hagrid's doing, too.
Right. He gets all the good teachers. My second thought about McGonigle is, I wonder if her bark is worse than her bite. it's the beginning of the year. It's first years, so I got to put on that tough face. And I know we
Similar to
talked
what
about
you
that.
were saying last time, yeah.
Like, I'm going to be tough and I'm going to threaten expulsion. I'm not really going to expel you. I just need you to think that I'm going to expel you, because if you
that I have the power to expel you.
Right.
And that if you really push the button, it'll happen. It's not going to happen right now.
And it's really not going to happen, but you don't need to know that it's really not going to happen. Because
especially
you need
in front of all the other students.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in front of all the other students. Because if it's just Harry one-on-one, maybe she acts a little bit differently right at the start. Uh-huh. But all potentially 20, minus Nevel, students were standing there. So all... She's got to save some of her face.
Yeah,
I agree.
The next question is, what are some trophies you would like to see in the trophy room?
I want to see Best Ghost.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Except you can only give that once.
Yeah, maybe it's like a
Ghost
plaque.
of the Year.
Ghost of the Year.
Ah.
Yeah, that's a paranormal entity of the year.
It'll only be Bloody Baron. They'll be all afraid
because he monopolizes the.
Well, everybody else will be afraid to vote against him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, I don't know if it would be like, I don't know, tallest tower building with magic, or, you know, like competitions of, you know, best, highest flyer on a broomstick.
Okay. Most, you could do a lot of Quidditch ones, but that's easy. Quidditch is easy. You think
it's a cop-out answer.
Yeah, it is. What else could there be? I didn't read these ahead of time. I kind of
wish
I would.
I forgot. Yeah. I forgot what I wrote, so that's all right. It works out.
You could always have your, you know, best in certain classes, but those are boring. Still.
Those are boring. I'm like, there's got to be some good ones. Like,
I like my original, but you know, Ghost of the Year is pretty good.
Yeah, I like Ghost of the Year. You know, we could also have like biggest blunder of the year.
Okay.
You know, like if you know, or like first year blunder of the year. So like the first year student who makes the biggest mistake in their first year, because that would be funny.
You could keep track of who kind of similar to that, like the biggest house point get at a single swing each year. You know, like what student? Oh, you got 15 points for ace in this or something.
So it's kind of like in sports and stuff, like team records.
Sure.
Or like the person who, you know, you were the first year Gryffindor who had the highest points ever. So, you know, Sally Burbank back in 1974 was the Gryffindor first year with the highest points in one fell swoop, with 27 points granted once. Right. You know, or
that student got the most points in the year.
In the
like,
year
of anybody.
Oh, you think that would be a different
right? Yeah, that's
award.
It'd be two different ones. So it'd be like essentially comparing most goals in a game compared to most goals in a season.
Right.
In like a soccer or a hockey game.
Right. Well, or it would even be like most goals ever by a team. Like, who is the person who got the most
career points?
Career points versus even, is there a player on the team? So, kind of like, and I'm going to use my St. Louis Cardinals reference, kind of like Jose Oquendo is, I mean, when was the last time besides him that one player has played all 9 positions in one game?
I think it was just in one season.
I'm pretty sure he did it in one game.
But it hasn't
But it's that
either
point.
Way, yeah.
Like, it would be somebody doing something so amazing that they got the most amount of points in one event ever.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you could do like each year the highest point getter in each house in each grade level.
Sure.
So each year you would give out best in year points, but then there would be a historical data of, okay, but I have the most points ever versus lifetime versus, yes, but I got the most points in one fell swoop kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't really think of too many other ones that aren't to do with Quidditch or house points, which seem like a little bit like cop-outs, but...
They do.
I don't know.
Okay.
Ghost of the Year.
Ghost of the Year. The next one is, what would have happened if Malfoy had met Harry for their duel?
I think Ron was right, and they just would have blown sparks at each other.
And they thrown down their wands and punched each other in the nose.
Fight,
yeah.
Which Malfoy and Crabbe would have won.
You think?
I think Crabbe would have won.
I don't know. I mean, they're big, but Harry's pretty scrappy. Especially because remember, it took how many kids to hold him down so Dudley could punch him? He had to be held down.
He was also magical. We're also fighting magic kids versus magic kids.
Yeah, but they're going to throw their wands away and punch each other.
They're still magical by nature.
Okay.
I don't know. I think what Ron said was probably right. They just would have dropped fisticuffs and thrown down.
It's going down. And the last question I have is, why would a 3-headed dog be a good idea inside of a school? Let me rephrase. Why would a vicious 3-headed dog be a good idea inside of a school?
If you're guarding something?
But
there's really, I can't think of too
many. But even while you're guarding something, I just don't see why a live attack animal is a good idea inside a school.
The door was locked.
But a first year was able to unlock it with a spell, so I'm thinking that's not
Hermione
a very good.
We're talking about.
Okay, fine. A third year would have been able to unlock it. You're telling me the Weasley twins couldn't have done it?
She's on a third year spell level.
She really is. You're telling me a Weasley twin couldn't have come up and undone that?
It seems pretty irresponsible of whoever said that was okay.
Right.
Or whoever's idea it was initially. And then worse, whoever okayed it.
Right.
Because it's one thing to have a bad idea. It's another thing to approve a bad idea. It's worse on that part.
So the supervisor should be blamed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fire them first.
All right. And now on to the chapter superlatives. And Luke, what was your favorite line in this chapter?
My favorite line was, "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick, could I borrow wood for a moment?" Wood, Harry thought, bewildered. Was wood a cane she was going to use on him? That's pretty funny.
I love that line. The introduction to wood is, it very well might be my favorite introduction to a character.
It might be the best. I mean, it uses his name as a prop for corporal punishment.
Right.
It's hilarious.
And you totally know that he's going to get in trouble. And at this point we've seen singing hats, and we've seen flying broomsticks and
staircases
owls,
that change their destination,
talking portraits,
doors you have to tickle. I mean,
yeah. Like we have.
Who knows what this could be? And that's what all he's thinking.
And that's how I felt the first time I read it. Like, oh my God, what are they going to do to him?
Right. It's great.
I was really worried. Now it's funny. But at first I was really concerned for this 11-year-old kid. What are they going to do?
And it is one of those like jokes that it's like, oh my gosh. And then it quickly turns around.
Oh yeah.
So like it just makes you feel that much better. You have that instant gratification out of it, as opposed to 30 chapters later, you finally get the punchline. It's like both have their place.
Yes.
But this one, for how crazy things have been,
and you
need to have it quick.
That Oliver Wood would never have another name ever. He could never be anything but Mr. Wood. Like, he had to have that name. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So.
What was your favorite line in this chapter?
I had several, but I'm just going to give my very most favorite. I'm actually going to pare it down. And my very favorite speaks to my good friend Hermione. And at the end of the chapter, after she is so mad at all of them, and she says, "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could have all been killed. Or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed."
Yeah. Or worse, expelled.
Or worse, expelled.
Priorities, Hermione.
I know, priorities, like, she knows, like, okay, if I'm dead, fine, but if I'm expelled, then what do I do?
Live with it.
Yeah, I mean...
That actually turns it on its head.
It does, except that, like, when I first read it, and every time
it's a pretty dark sense of humor, or a sense of world.
Right, like it's better to be dead than expelled. Are you okay?
Right.
You're not okay.
Yeah.
So
you need to talk to the guidance counselor.
But if I needed one line to sum up early book Hermione, that's it.
Yeah, that one's pretty descriptive.
Yes. All right. So Luke, who was your chapter MVP?
My chapter honorable mention MVP was Peeves. Not for the fact that he turns them in or, starts shouting in the corridor that first years are out in the halls, but that he also doesn't rat them out in the long run. Like, he sets them up that they think he's going to be their enemy, and then it's like their best friend. Like, he just, like, totally stalls and...
he saves them.
And saves them. I mean, so it's almost like that best friend that's trying to get you in trouble, but really isn't. He's just trying to have a laugh. And I thought it was just... not the nicest thing he could have done, but not the worst thing he could have done.
Well, it was pretty nice, but I don't think he did it for nice motives.
Right, yeah, no, and so what he says is... shan't
say nothing if you don't say please. I love that. That was one of my other backup lines.
So then Filch says, all right, please.
Nothing! Ha ha ha! Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please.
Right. So he is having a laugh for his own sake.
Oh, yeah.
And at Filch's expense.
But does it to help a couple kids out?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that isn't his first thought, but it does.
Right.
Right. So he's a neutral, chaotic type character.
True.
He likes to create chaos, but he's
never know where he's
not good or evil. Like it's
right.
He just likes...
or he's evil to everyone, which balances out.
Yeah, he is net neutrality on evil. So I just thought it was worth giving him a couple props there. Who was your chapter MVP?
I feel like we met this character several chapters ago, and I don't believe we have given them.
I don't think we have
an MVP yet. And I really think that now is the time that we need to give a shout out.
And recognize
Ron Weasley. He is the best friend Harry could have asked for. I mean, ever since the train ride even, and I know I'm going back a few chapters, ever since the train ride even, like, he became Harry's friend and that was it. They were just friends. But the reason he really stands out is his willingness to jump right in to the duel and back up Harry. There is no question that he's going to be there for his friend. And he's going to do it no matter what. I think that really shows his loyalty, bravery sort of, but just loyalty and friendship and ability to just jump in and do and help.
Yeah. He did get a secondary honorable mention last chapter after the Snape class where he kind of really gets Harry's head out of the gutter, or out of the dumps, and just gets his mind off how terrible that class was. And
true.
So he hasn't actually been awarded one.
Well, he gets my vote.
I think he definitely doubly deserves it this time.
Yes.
That's a good pick.
That wraps it up for this chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Listeners, we do really love to hear from you, so please reach out to us with your comments or questions or other randomness on Twitter at NotNamedPodcast, online at thepodcastthat.com, or you can email us at thepodcastthatmustnotbenamed@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you next week when we discuss Chapter 10.
Halloween.
Have a great week. Thanks.